Hi everyone, I'm here with George Adams, who's got some exciting, interesting anecdotes and information to share around his career. George, tell me a little bit about your career so far before you came to Microsoft.
Sure, thank you, Rory. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you view these things, I started out my career as an IBMer. I was there for a good 4.5 years. And as part of that, I worked quite heavily on several runtimes, working with Node.js, Swift, Java. And when I kind of got to the end of my time at IBM, we put together the concept of AdoptOpenJDK. And so I was one of the co-founders behind that. After that time, I decided to take a short and sweet stint with JClarity, led by Martin Verberg, who, as you may or may not be aware, Microsoft very kindly bought back last year. And so I kind of took a swing from big corporate world to startup and then straight back into the big corporate world again.
You mentioned AdoptOpenJDK, and I have it running right now on my Mac. Really big fan of it, though. Tell me a little bit about the community and also the software.
Sure. So AdoptOpenJDK is a community of something like 7,500 developers now. It grew quite quickly. It's got to a point now where we can't sort of keep up with all the pull requests and issues being raised. But the sole purpose of the project was to resolve a key issue in the Java ecosystem, and that being that all of these different vendors were building their own JVMs. For example, you had Linux distros that were producing their own. You had Oracle, you had several others. And what we started seeing was like a creep of changes and differences between these JDKs.
Yes,
so
I remember.
you might have a development JDK on your Mac, and you'd be writing your code changes, and you'd push that up into production. And before you knew it, it was running on Ubuntu's version of OpenJDK. And the way that they changed Semver might have been slightly different. And before you knew it, there would be a problem and your application simply wouldn't work. So the goal was to create a completely vendor-neutral JVM that anybody could use for free, that was supported across pretty much every platform out there that you can compile OpenJDK on, including even really weird ones like we've started working on ports for RISC-V. We've sort of been keeping up the bandwagon of even making Solaris and stuff compile on it. So we've got over, I think, 15 different platform architecture variants that we're now building on. And we build across all these different versions of OpenJDK from 8 to TIP, which is currently 16. And yeah, let's say that the project kind of just grew from there. And before we knew it, we had 200 million people using our binaries.
Sorry, say again that number?
200 million, and that grows very quickly. We're seeing impressive growth. To quickly put that into perspective, the project was started in 2018. In 2018, we hit the big million download mark. In 2019,
wow.
We hit 30 million. And obviously, now we're in 2020, reaching the end, we're at 210 million, I believe. So it's quite an exponential growth. So it's been a fun ride.
I remember when the only option to choose a JDK was a vendor-driven JDK. And I think this was about just after Java 8 or 9. And I quickly did some investigation, and I found AdoptOpenJDK. And my entire community, so I run the a Java user group in South Africa, we quickly informed the entire Java user group and most of Africa that to go to AdoptJDK because you were the only vendor-neutral JDK instance that we could find. I think there was Azure and there was others though, but there was nothing that was just plain old. Here's a JDK or JORE, and it's not really linked to any strong licensing requirements regarding that. That being said, though, is it free? So for the interviewers and the people watching here, so can they download it now?
Yeah, it's completely free. You don't have to sign up or register or enter an email address. You can go straight to the website and you can download any of the binaries, and you can essentially embed them into any of your applications. You can run them on development environments. It's under standard GPL class path exception. So yeah, it's as free as it could ever be. That's the purpose of this. And as you say, I think the key behind its success was the fact that it wasn't backed by a single vendor. It was a lot of people, when the license changes came in from Oracle, didn't want to just pick up and move to another vendor that could do the same thing. And I think that's why it's been so successful. People wanted an insurance policy that they knew couldn't suddenly be corrupted by one company or modified or suddenly locked behind a firewall. And so,
Or
yeah,
200 million people, or 200 million downloads. That's incredible. And you mentioned earlier that you're making multiple platforms. And what is the weirdest platform that you've had to actually make a distro for so far?
It's been difficult. RISC-V has been an interesting experience for us. It's like the open source architecture set, and we managed to get hold of these tiny little development boards, and we had to basically set them up. They're actually running behind me at the moment. It's the old sort of stick it in your bedroom and power it up approach. But we managed to get them running Linux, and we've managed to get all of the tool chain onto it, and we've managed to get them producing OpenJDK builds. So it's been quite an interesting one. But also, trying to do Solaris was definitely a challenge. There were a lot of people that came asking for Solaris when Oracle.
Where do you even get a Solaris PC from now?
Well, eBay is the easiest approach. And that's how we did it. We managed to get some and just order it online, and we managed to get it into a rack somewhere, and we run it, and it runs. I've heard it's heating the whole data center well, but it runs, and we're able to compile this stuff. But it's incredible, really, seeing all of these experts of one particular platform that have kind of come out from the dark and helped collaborate in a single place. And I think that's been the really powerful thing. And we're always trying to be completely on the top of it. So obviously, Microsoft recently announced the OpenJDK port from 64 on Windows. So we're immediately trying to nail down that, and we're also trying to work on a Mac Silicon OpenJDK. So we're always trying to be right at the bleeding edge, but also right in the dark and doomy world of whatever mainframe or old system you're stuck on. So we're trying to do everything.
That's very interesting, and I also like the fact that you mentioned Microsoft and Microsoft's contribution of there. Where do you see Microsoft's contribution with Java going with the AdoptOpenJDK? So how do you actually also get all of that experience into the Microsoft ecosystem?
I think there's a few ways that we can do it. I mean, Microsoft is an enormous user of Java, despite the fact that we all see it as the .NET monster. And so there's a huge amount of JVM tooling and applications running internally and also being shipped to external customers. And so one of the things we wanted to do was improve our knowledge and understanding of the JVM and start producing patches for it, such as we've worked very closely on Shenandoah. We've put a load of patches up into that already. But what we wanted to be able to do was not just have to kind of start again. So for those that haven't tried it, compiling an OpenJDK binary is simple on certain platforms, but it gets a lot more obscure when you're trying to do it on some strange embedded hardware that's running in your basement. And so we've written this sort of crazy 60,000 line shell script that does all sorts of crazy logic and basically sets up the environment so that basically you could run on whatever machine and environment you are, and it will work out if you're missing a dependency, it will work out where a particular dependency is located. And so all of that tooling that we've worked on at Adopt for the last few years, we've suddenly been able to bring internally and benefit from. So all of these scripts are in the open. And it also a whole load of test scripts that were written by IBM and others we can benefit from. And so everything we're now doing internally, we're putting through the exact same tests that AdoptOpenJDK would be doing. And so there's a huge amount of benefit we can get from that. And it makes sense. I always try and coin the term, no one competes on build farms. It's much better if we can all share that burden and then work on the interesting stuff. Then I'd say that's a win for any company, not just Microsoft.
I strongly agree. And tell me a little bit about the future. So some exciting news that you might have for the listeners around there. It's a fantastic time to be a developer now. The tooling, the frameworks, the languages. What can they look forward to?
I mean, I'm just super excited to see where the ARM work goes. I was so excited to see that we were able to not only lead the Windows port, but also contribute incredibly heavily to the Mac port. I never thought I'd see the day that Microsoft put out a blog saying we're leading the effort for the Mac Silicon OpenJDK port. And so I can't wait to see where we go from there, how we can work on further optimizations for both Azure, but also on local machines. I'd love to see all of those patches upstreamed. As I say, we've already contributed heavily into Shenandoah, and we continue to do so. We have great collaboration with Red Hat and others. And so I'm just looking forward to seeing how the numbers rise. I don't know if you saw when Oracle cuts a new version, major version, they always give a nice sort of grid table summarizing the contributions per company. And this time around for 15, we were a very small box in the bottom right corner because we just started. But I can't wait to see that box grow and grow by 16, 17, 18. And hopefully we'll become a really key contributor to the JVM.
That's
I think there's a huge amount that we've learned from the JVM and even put into the likes of .NET and C++. And I'd love to see some of those features brought back and contributed back to the JVM. So we'll have to see, but I think it's going to be an exciting couple of years for sure.
That's great. Thanks so much, George, for the time today. If people need to contact you, we'll put your Twitter profile and also Adopt OpenJDK, the details on the YouTube video. Thanks for your time today, and a really exciting interview we had with you. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks, Rory.